Hi, in this video I'll be installing the Centrify agent for Windows in the continuation of my eval series of the Centrify Infrastructure Services. This should just be the privilege elevation service for the Centrify agent for Windows. And if you're familiar with this software, this is what was previously called Centrify Service Suite. At this point, I'm assuming that you've watched the other videos. You've already set up the back-end OU structures for the zones. You have your test users all ready to go and everything's been set up. Please refer to the other videos for all the back-end setup. So what we're doing in this video, again, talk about the, I'll show you how I can verify the back end, that my test users ready to go, my policies are all ready. We're going to obtain the Windows agent package. If you haven't downloaded it already, I'll show you where you can get it. Either the big Windows package where we did the back end setup, the agent's under there, or you can download just the Windows package. On the Windows machine, it's our test Windows machine. I have a Windows 10. It's already joined to Active Directory, and I have a local admin account available to install the agent. We're going to install the Windows agent. I'll show you how that's done, and then we're going to configure some sample rights and roles for privilege elevation. All right, so let's get started. So again, I'm assuming you have all the back end done. This is important. Oh, I already got it running. You can't just install Windows agent without and join to a zone if there's no zone already set up. So I'm assuming you've already set up the back end. You have Centrify OU and AD. You have full privilege of the Centrify OU. You set it all up according to the videos, and we have a Windows child zone that's all ready to go. And if I right click and show effective Windows user rights, admin and my test user. So my test user, mine is Diane Worth, the person I'm logged in as, but I have a test user ready to go, even if it's not the person you logged in as long as they can have the Windows login role. And remember, I set up the admin, so domain admins can log on, and that's important. As a backup, I always like to let the domain admins log on to the child zone. Later on we can take that away, but by default admins are used to log in everywhere. So we're going to be adding in the Centrify agent, and one of the things, the privileges it can do is the privilege, the right to log in. One of the roles is the right to log in, and we have to give that role to admins. So if we didn't explicitly do that, even admins wouldn't log in. So that's all important, and I think we should be ready to go. So let's go look at the software. This is the Centrify support portal. If I go to the download center, this is May of 2018. So this is what it looks like at this point. If I scroll down, we're going to do the Infrastructure Services 2018. This is the latest version at this point. When you're watching this video, it might be a .1 or a .2, but we want to get the latest. We've already downloaded this big backend bundle that has the entire backend Windows package. Within inside of that is also the agent package, and I'll show you that. And we're just going to download this particular zip. So this zip, if you click on that, it'll download. It might take it to a EULA that you have to accept. And then you can go back and then you can download the zip. So I'll show you where all that is. So just an FYI, when we downloaded the backend Windows package, underneath there, we did this auto run. And you notice when you bring the auto run up, the Windows agent is one of the options. I'm not installing on this machine. So you could have this big package somewhere, but why do that? Just the agent package itself. There's the application to install it, and there's the MSI file for Windows installation. So this is what we're going to be running. I've gone ahead and I've copied it over to my Windows 10 machine. So I have the agent. I downloaded it, unzipped it, and then here's my subdirectory, and I got the application ready to go. Again, you can push this file out with standard MSI, the standard MSI package. All the standard package distribution software out there can push this out. We can do it through group policy as well. I'm just going to show how to do it manually. So let's double click the agent here and click yes. Setup wizard, hit next. Accept the license agreement, hit next. Where you want to install it, next, install. So we've installed the agent. However, it's really like a base package to install the services. So we really haven't done any changes yet. We haven't joined this machine to a zone. We haven't done anything else. It's just ready to go and you have to run the agent configuration wizard. So until we do that is when we make the major changes. So let's keep that checked, hit finish, and then here it is. So it pops up here, and then we're going to add a service. It's a little bit different than the Centrify Windows Agent in the past, if you've done this in the years past. So we're going to click Add a Service, and then the different services pop up. The Identity Service Platform is not what we're doing. This is when you're joining this machine to the cloud. There's a lot of things we can do with that. It's either the cloud or on-premise. It's the rest of the Centrify tenant, or the Centrify platform that can be either a tenant in the cloud or an on-premise version to do MFA logons, a bunch of other things that the tenant and platform can do. We're not doing that in this video. We're doing what used to be called Centrify Service Suite, a standard agent that does a privilege elevation so I can raise my privilege, and this is what we want to install. Now the options you see that show up here depends on what's already in your environment. You're always going to see this Identity Service Platform because it's joined to the cloud, but the other options might not show up. There's also an auditing option. We haven't installed auditing in our environment, so it knows not to have that option up. If you don't see the privilege elevation, you're only going to see it if you installed some zones. I have some screenshots here. So this option only shows up if you at least created one Centrify zone. If you're not seeing anything, if you're only seeing something like this, that's because you haven't created any zones. This install program knows to look inside Active Directory and look for Centrify zones. If you haven't created any, it's figuring there's no reason you want to join this to a zone and do the privilege elevation. So you got to have that configured. If you click on the Identity Services Platform and you get an error like this, it's because the rest of the Centrify platform, there's a connector. This installation needs to find that connector. That connector is how it connects to the back of the rest of the platform. If you don't have that set up, you're going to get this kind of error. But if you've done it right, if you've set up everything, following the videos, you should have the Centrify zones all ready to go. So we're going to do the privilege elevation service. All right. So click on that, and then I'm going to hit OK. And this is where we pick our zones. So obviously we had to have zones again for that to show up in the first place. So I'm going to do the Windows zone, hit Next. So we talked about this before. When I have the domain admins for my Windows zone, I'm already allowing domain admins to log on. The Centrify agent, like a firewall, deny unless explicitly allow. So you have to explicitly allow users or AD groups the right to log on. We've already done that. But if you didn't, you could lock out domain admins. So this is this little helper during the install to make sure, hey, have you done that already? So we don't need to assign this at the computer level. We're just going to say no thanks. We've already taken care of that. We know at least domain admins can log on. Click OK. And now it says I must restart. So give this a second. I'm going to look over to here. So if I go back into here, into my Windows zone, and I do a refresh, there you go. So now I knew that I had this Windows 10 Pro, and it showed up under my computers, under my Windows child zone. And again, under here, you have role assignments. There's no reason to have the Unix data section under this computer because it's a Windows computer. So the computer rebooted. So now test log on. So your test user should be able to log on because again, even though you logged on before this, we just put the agent on there and we have to explicitly allow them to log on. So log on your test user and make sure it works. Mine is Diana Worth, who also happens to be an admin. So, but she's allowed to log on because I made the policy. So what I want to show you is, look at the bottom. All right, had a phone call. So down here you saw some information about desktop. If you click on this little arrow and see the Centrify icon, if you right click on there, there's some information here. We're not going to do any desktop discussion in this video. Besides running applications with privileges, we can also open up a second desktop with privileges. We'll discuss that in another video. Right here I just want to show you the authorization center. If I pop that up, you see I'm logged in as this Diana Worth and I have some roles the Windows logon role was given me. So I can close this out. Another thing I want to show, if you go into File Manager or File Explorer and go into C, Program Files, Centrify, Centrify Agent for Windows. Look inside here. I just want to show you some things. Scroll down to, there's an application, Centrify Direct Authorized Agent.config. That's something you can double click and run. It's has some good information for us. It's also not a bad thing to right click and make a shortcut for it. So that way, at any time, I can get to it by just double clicking. This is a good little tool to look at. Give some nice information. What zone I'm in allows me to change it if I have that rights. And go into troubleshooting here, and I can do diagnostic and look for some information here. I can view the log, but what I think I can also do is refresh the cache, and that'll come in handy later on. When you do a policy change, the agent only checks for a new policy every 20 minutes, and then it keeps the cache. So if you make a change, you might not want to wait 19, 20 minutes, so you can come in here and you can refresh this. Another thing is you see down here, you see the authorization center. If you bring that up, that's the same thing that we saw down here. All right. So one thing I forgot to show you, when I did this install, my Diana Worth, I'm an admin, so I have rights to join it to a zone. In case I didn't have rights, if you're not happen to be the same person, my Centrify admin is also the admin with rights. One thing I forgot to show you is inside this zone, you can right click and say, what am I doing? Delegate zone control. There it is. So delegate zone control is basically you're giving someone permission to join computers to this zone or do a couple things. So I'm going to say delegate zone control. I can add. I find a specific user I want to do, add to this policy, hit next, and I could do all. This is all the Centrify privileges, but I don't need that. I just want to allow someone to join computers to the zone and remove computers from the zone. All right. So if I hit next and then finish, that way the person doing the Centrify agent install, maybe they're not the Centrify admin, so I gave them privileges. And what that was really doing was modifying security inside of AD. If you actually go into zones, and I can go into my Windows zone here under computers, if you right click on here and go to properties, what that wizard really did was go in the security tab, and that's where it added in that Nancy Adams and gave her the right to do some things inside of here, some special permissions. All right. So I forgot to show you that. So we're all good here. We installed, we have the agent running, showed you some of these tools. So again, deny unless explicitly allow. We allow Diana Worth to log in, or my test user was Diana Worth. If I sign out, by default, most environments let all users in AD log in everywhere. I have a guy named Chuck Webb. He's on the web development team. Go figure, his name is Chuck Webb. But he doesn't need to log into this machine. He doesn't have rights because we never gave it to him. Let's pretend this machine is a server, right? And I need the web team to log on and do some things. So let's give Chuck the right to log in, and let's give him some privilege elevation. Let's allow him to run some applications. All right. So what we need to do is, and again, a little recap from earlier videos. We already have Windows role definitions out of the box. The global zone is where I like to define things, and then you assign it out child zone. But out of the box, we already have a Windows login role defined. So I don't need to define again. So under the Windows zone, under authorization role assignments, I'm going to allow this web architect team the right to log on. So if I go to ADuct and I look under my staff, I have a group of the web architects. If I go in there, there's my Chuck Webb. Let's pretend there's a whole bunch of people on there, right? My web team. So I'm going to give my web team the right to log on to this machine. Again, let's pretend this is a server this web team needs to log on to. So if I right-click in here and assign role, you want to find your Windows logon role from the global zone. Click OK. Click Add AD account. Change the group. And then I want to find my sample group. So now I'm allowing all those web people. So if I right-click on this and say Show Effective Windows User Rights, my Chuck Webb can log in. But he's going to want to do some things with raised privileges. So let me define some new rights and roles. So I can close up the child zone because I like to define thing in my global zone. You go into Windows rights and go under applications. On the Unix side, these would be like sudo-like rights for commands. On the Windows side, we're defining applications. There's some built-in applications already, but I can right-click on Windows definitions and add some predefined rights. You see these three right here are helper applications. We need to whitelist specifically what somebody can run. You can run Event Viewer, DistiFrag, this specific application, VMware vSphere, an Oracle application, a specific application. But there are some Windows-like tools that we want people to run, so we made these helper applications that can change or repair software, modify network adapters, change and modify Windows features. So we made this helper application that can do those things. So this is something you can give to people. But let's right-click on Windows right definition and say Add Predefined Rights. There's a whole bunch in here that we can go through and we can use an example. But let's just pick two. I don't have any good things for web developers or admins. So let's just say Event Viewer and DistiFrag. Let's pretend these are the applications that my web team needs to run with elevated privileges. Because you actually need elevated privileges to run DistiFragmenter and to look at the security logs. So I'm going to add them in. So in my applications, now you see them. So let's show you what Centrify does. This is a right. We're going to define a right that you can raise your privilege to and give that bunch of rights into a role and assign that role to a user or an AD group at a child zone. So if I look at any of these rights, double click on it, this has to match a certain criteria. So if I look at this, I can hit edit. I'm looking for an application name, but I can also look for a hash file. So I'm just going to say add. I'm going to add an empty process. Let's pretend this is about MMC. If I bring that in, notice it has the file hash, or I could do a product version. So you're really fingerprinting what this application looks like, and you're defining what it looks like. I could do a specific version is equal earlier to or older kind of thing, a file hash, besides just doing the name of the application. But these are all ORs, so I have the old name for DistiFrag and then the new name for DistiFrag. So if any of these match, this is like a sudo on Unix, but I'm defining what they can run. And then this is what they're running as. You could do a user, but let's do group instead. So this is a local admin group. You could add AD groups in here, but I'm doing a local admin group. So running as myself, adding that local admin group, that in order to run the applications I need to run. And down here is important. If you don't want the person to re-auth, that's fine. But how about they re-auth with their password, or if they log in with a smart card, this current user credential will be their smart card PIN. Don't do the multi-factor. This is for when you're using the rest of the tenant, that identity services that we did not install. When we have that rest of the tenant and the cloud connector and all that, that's what we would use for MFA. Those MFA factors, SMS text, oath, we can do email, we can do a mobile authenticator, a bunch of things we can do on that side, phone calls. But we're not doing that now. That'll be another video for installing the rest of the identity services. Right now, we can re-authenticate with either their AD password, or if they logged on with a smart card, we can redo a PIN. So I like to re-authenticate for my applications, so I'm going to do that as well. And then re-authenticate with the current user credentials. So now I have these applications defined. I got to create a role for them. And again, I like to do everything at the global zone. So under role definitions, I can click on it. I can right-click in the white space, right-click in here. I want to add a role. A good name, I like to call it role, Windows, and then this is for the web team, right? So let's call it something like web, I don't know, Windows Web Level 1. So it's the web team level 1, maybe there's a level 2 or something like that. This is nothing about Unix rights. I don't have to give them any Windows rights to log on because I've already given them the logon role. I'm going to stack these, basically. So we can just hit apply. So I have a new role, but I haven't assigned any rights to it. So I actually got to right-click on it and add the rights. And then I want to add DistiFragmenter and Event Viewer. So you define rights, define a role, put rights into a role, and now I have this role definition that I can assign to an AD group at a child zone. I could assign it to a user at a computer, but good role-based access control says, let's assign it to an AD group at an entire zone. So if I go into my Windows zone and go to role assignments, I can right-click in here, See, the architecture web, they already have right to log on. Now I'm going to stack on top of that some additional rights. So there's my nice naming convention. It's easy to find. Find that role. Click Add AD Group. Click Group. And then I find my group. So now if I right-click and do Show Effective Windows Rights, you'll see my Chuck Web has two roles here, the right to log on and the role that gives them this Windows level role. If we look under Application, he can run dist-defrag and Event Viewer. And it's self with added group privileges. Okay, so we have this nice definitions. And I'm all good to go, right? So now on this Windows machine, Chuck Web should be able to log in. However, as I mentioned before, the policy is only refreshes every 20 minutes. So this might take a minute, might take 19 more minutes. So we can actually force that with that flush the cache option I showed you earlier. So I want this agent to go get its latest policy right now. I don't want to wait a couple minutes. Because remember, what we're doing inside of Centrify is, this is a MMC snap-in. I'm actually, when I'm modifying policies, I'm modifying objects stored inside of AD. I'm modifying some objects inside the Centrify OU. That gets distributed to all my domain controllers, and then my agent right here connects to its closest domain controller and refreshes every 20 minutes. Now, if you're in a big domain, this Windows machine might be connected to domain 2. Your policy was changed on domain 1. It might take some DC to DC replication time depending on your environment. I only have one DC, so I'm fine. So now, remember this right here, this shortcut we created? I can go into here and I can go into troubleshooting and I can refresh the cache. If you're used to on the Unix side, this is like an AD flush, the Centrify command. So now I just told this agent, go out to your domain controller and download the latest policy. And the latest policy says Chuck Web can log on, and he has some applications he can run with privilege. So let me do a new user. And there you go. Now, this happened to be the first time Chuck Web is logged on, so I got some setup here. Let me pause this as Windows does its setup. So there you go. First, I was able to log on. This is the first time this user logged on to this machine, so Windows 10 does some setup stuff. And again, down here in the bottom right, I can right-click, show that Centrify tool, and open the authorization tool, and you'll see some things in here, effective roles, two of them. The right to log in and this web level 1 role that I gave to the web people. So what can he do? So let's dist-defragmenter and event viewer. So if I look for defrag, well actually let's see, look for event. Can't type. Where are you? All right, there it is. So let's go to location because I want to run a couple things here. So dist-defragmenter right here, if I go to run it, it actually takes admin privileges to do some things. If I try to change the settings, I'm not allowed. CWeb does not have permission. He's not an admin. But with Centrify, now I can right-click and see this little Centrify icon, run with privilege. So now I'm raising my privilege. I'm actually modifying the security token if we want to get under the covers, and I'm adding that group, that my local admin as the group. Whatever this role says, I'm doing local admin. And then I had it re-auth. So this could be my password. If you logged on with a smart card, that would be your PIN. So now I can run this tool and I can do things as an admin. Because I'm running this tool as a local admin because that's how the policy was. I can run as any group or anything I want. So here's my event viewer. If I bring that up, notice if I go into security, I don't have the right to look at it. All right? Because I'm not a local admin. If I right click on it and say run with privilege, I'm forced to do a second re-auth. So now if I go to Windows Security, you'll notice I can see things. as soon as my virtual machine catches up. So the other thing is I've been running all these raise with privileges. So Centrify has been raising the privilege. We are logging all that locally, and this can be sucked up by a SIM, like ArcSight, Splunk, or things like that. If you go to the application logs, you'll see these Centrify audit trail. If you open that up, you'll see this defragmenter was run by Chuck Webb. So as a certain role. So this is all going into the local event logs, which can be sucked up by any SIM system. Same thing when I raise my privilege to run the event viewer. So everything we do is logged locally, and then it can be sucked up by your SIM systems, and that's going to be great to bring in all this into some centralized dashboard. We actually do have plugins in Splunk and ArcSight plugins to help you when you load this data up. You can get some nice pretty things on the dashboard. So that's it. That's all I wanted to show you. Again, as a recap, we installed the Windows agent with the privilege elevation option, join it to the zone, logged in with our sample user, also added another user, and showed you how you can add login in for a group and also do some privilege elevation. Thank you very much.